Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our monthly Toilets to Tenants virtual meeting. I'm Nina Cole. I founded this group with Vanessa McLennan probably about 4 years ago. And we're just a networking group free for anyone to join. We've got a Facebook page, and then we try to do monthly meetings, either just a networking meeting or meetings where we have speakers. So Vanessa, you want to do a quick intro?
Hi, I'm Vanessa McLennan with Universal Lending. We founded this group for landlord education and support. Feel free to ask any questions from either of us, as we both work in this industry.
Okay, so today's guest speaker, let me see if I can, we have Lisa Kerin-Welch and Sabrina Calnan. Am I pronouncing your last name correct? So Lisa is the owner of KWConnect, and her group educates the public on how to build wealth using their current assets. She teaches all about ADUs, Airbnb 101, and personal branding. And I'm excited to hear how she's actually changing her zoning on her lot, and she's going to build an ADU on her home. So I'm excited to hear about that. And then Sabrina is the owner of bnbExcellent, and she used to do property management for big, long-term rentals, and then kind of decided to go into the shorter-term management. So her company is focused on providing management for short-term rentals from listing to marketing turnovers. And then Sabrina also teaches classes Airbnb 101, as well as a new detailed educational class on how to get started, setting it up, pricing, damage resolutions, etc. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa and Sabrina, and I think you guys kind of do things together and kind of talk. And do you want people to ask questions throughout or wait to the end?
It's best if we kind of do a Q&A interactive session. So, we'll give a quick intro to everything, and you can just ask questions throughout, whether you want to just unmute yourselves and ask or ask them in the chat. Either way works for us.
Yeah, this is meant to be super interactive. We're so happy to be here with you guys. Nina and I go way back to a networking group that we did years and years ago. So it's super fun to be with you again today. Sabrina, do you want to talk? Well, I'm probably most people know what an accessory dwelling unit is in this group, but should we define that, Nina, a little bit and kind of talk about the uses?
Maybe just do the 60 seconds about what it is.
Got it. Okay, Sabrina, why don't you go with the definition?
Yeah, so accessory dwelling unit, it goes by ADU for short. Essentially, it's a secondary unit that's on your same property or on your same lot. So for example, I have a little carriage house in the back of my home that's considered an accessory dwelling unit. A little basement unit that is its own apartment, like a mother-in-law suite, would also be considered an accessory dwelling unit. So the units can be either attached or detached, but it's basically a little unit secondary to the home. And it can be, they can be larger. A lot of times they're just 1 or 2 bedrooms, but so long as they're smaller, I think, than the original home, it's considered an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, exactly. So like Nina said, we are empty nesters now. We moved our youngest to CU in August. And when we looked at the market, we thought it just made better sense for us to build an accessory dwelling unit on our own lot and perhaps even downsize to that. We have a huge corner lot in Mayfair. It's 10,000 square feet. So we were able to do the largest build that ADU for You has done up to date, which is 1,000 square feet on the bottom and 750 on top, which you have to keep the top level 75% of the bottom level. So there are a lot of rules and regulations around this. I think that what I've found since doing this and teaching about it is there's a big misconception that this is kind of like putting a shed in your backyard. And that is completely untrue. This is actually a home. You are actually building a home, and everything that is required to build a home is required to build an accessory dwelling unit. So we talked about one use, which would be a downsize, which we are considering. Super popular use is multi-generational. So it's super ideal for aging family members or childcare providers. We are actually working with 2 families right now, one who is moving their mom to Colorado to live with them, and another who is moving their dad to live with them in the accessory dwelling unit. So they have their privacy in their own little home. It can be a long-term rental. It also can be a short-term rental. So there are rules around that in Denver currently. So some of the rules are that you cannot sell one or the other properties. You have to be a primary resident somewhere on one of them. And if you are the primary resident in the primary residence, you can short-term rent the ADU. But if you are the primary residence in the ADU, you cannot short-term rent the big house. Does that make sense? Are there any questions around that?
Can you say that again?
So if we, yeah, Vanessa, if we downsize to our ADU, we can long-term rent out our big house, but we can't short-term rent it out. If
Lisa, why
our
is
big,
that? Why is that? Because I was under the impression, I was thinking of doing the same thing, like moving to my ADU and then renting out the big house, or doing short-term rental on the big house. So is
That
it
is-
a city rule?
That's the city rule currently. And I'm a member of the short-term rental advisory committee, and Sabrina attends all of the meetings. And I can tell you that these are ever-changing rules and regulations, and ADU is big right now, and it is ever-changing. So my hope is that someday we'll be able to sell one of the properties. But again, that is against the rules for Denver right now. Sabrina, you want to speak a little bit? Yeah.
I was just going to say, so, you know, the rules we're talking about are for Denver. How
Yeah.
versed are you in the Denver metro area? So some of the cities around Denver, like Aurora and Westminster and Broomfield, you know, if somebody approached you and wanted to know their rules, do you have information on how to find out what different cities' rules are?
Yeah, we are very versed in that. Sabrina and I actually teach an Airbnb 101 class that covers Denver and Metro. Sabrina, you want to talk a little bit to that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're looking at 2 different sets of rules here, right? So first we have the rules to build an ADU, and then we have the rules on how you can use the ADU. So what we are finding is that the purpose of an ADU is to help, you know, build the affordable housing stock in cities. That's, I think, one of the main reasons that politics have been so friendly to accessory dwelling units lately. And we're finding, you know, Denver is super friendly. We're starting to learn that the suburbs are super friendly. Some of these places, they don't have rules regarding short-term rentals established for accessory dwelling units because they've never had a lot of accessory dwelling units. You know, for example, in Boulder, with regards to an accessory dwelling unit and short-term rental, if you already have an accessory dwelling unit or you had an accessory dwelling unit prior to 2019, Boulder made new accessory dwelling unit laws in January of 2019. If you had an ADU prior to 2019 and you already had a short-term rental license on it, then in Boulder, you are allowed to short-term rent that accessory dwelling unit 120 days out of the year, but the rest of the year it has to be long-term. And I believe Boulder has the same law where you cannot live in the accessory dwelling unit and rent out the main home. And I know that's, you know, when I first learned that City of Denver was making that also the case, because a lot of people didn't know that, and City of Denver had never really said that before. I really, you know, it surprised me because I know that a lot of people have the plan to move into their small house and short-term rent the long one and fund their retirement in that way. And unfortunately, that's not an option in a lot of places right now. And it seems to be going in that direction. What we find in general is most of the metro area will take a look at what Denver is doing and follow what Denver is doing.
We always recommend, Nina and everyone, that you go directly to of the city and county because it's different city by city and county by county. And if there isn't enough information on the site to actually call to make sure that you're doing your due diligence for yourself and also for your clients if you are a real estate agent. So we're also finding that they are blanket rezoning different areas. For example, Chaffee Park has been blanket rezoned. East Colfax has been blanket rezoned for ADUs. Has been blanket rezoned for ADUs. That was huge. And right now, Regis Berkeley is working very hard. Blanket rezone for ADUs. So we're finding that Denver and surrounding is very pro. We are finding, unless there is an HOA involved, that the suburbs are really pro ADU. Actually, even easier, we're finding to get rezoned, et cetera. The process is a little quicker. I mean, we're still in the rezone process, and it's been 5 months, right, Sabrina?
Yeah, the rezone process, it takes a while, but generally the city is approving these. I think Lisa and I have not heard of a rezone to date that has been denied in the city of Denver.
Yeah. They're just a little behind in everything. So you just have to be patient in terms of the city of Denver. It could take up to 6 to 9 months to get a rezone for us currently. We're not afraid at all that it won't be rezoned. That's why we're moving forward with all the rest of it.
Lisa, can you talk a little bit, what are the steps to get rezoned? Like, what did you need to do? Did the neighbors need to sign off? Do you need to get your local neighborhood, organization on board?
The thing that I love the most about the company ADU for You is that I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. I mean, I have a job. I want them to handle this for us. They handled absolutely everything. So they obviously were very close with our neighbors, and they asked that you kind of just chat with them and just kind of tell them what's going on. We didn't have any neighborhood issue thus far. They will get an opportunity to make a public statement at one of the meetings. I think we have to show up to one of the meetings. There's really not much the neighbors can do. I mean, you obviously want them to be okay with it. And we're, again, like I said, we're on a huge corner lot, so it shouldn't interfere with anyone. But we'll see what's happened. But I mean, Nina, you wouldn't believe soil testing and appraisal. And I mean, it is everything that you do for a new build home. And ADU for You handles all of it. Currently, we did the financing through them. That was super smooth. Takes longer than a regular finance just because it's a little more complicated, but still very smooth. And we just had our first design meeting. They have an architect. I mean, they literally hold your hand for the entire thing. We have done nothing. We will at least have 3 meetings with this architect to figure out the design. And then they even have an interior designer that can help you as well. So really, we've done nothing but, just listen and trust them. But we have not had any neighbor issues. Although, we always say, Sabrina and I always say, for short-term rental or for ADU, just, know your neighbors, let them know what you're doing, what you're planning to do, and that, you plan for it to not interfere with them at all. I mean, honestly, this will increase our property value, and which in turn, as a real estate agent should increase the property value of our neighbors.
So Lisa, is there a specific size of lot is there a minimum lot size to do an ADU?
Yeah, there's a lot of rules and regulations around that, and I'm not exactly the expert. Jeff would be the expert. He's the ADU for You. But what we were just telling people, I work for them now because I love what they're doing so much and what they've done with us. So just reach out to me and we'll get all that information for you. But it's going to take a little bit of research. And then he even will do a site visit to make sure that it's okay. Because there's $20,000 worth of stuff that needs to happen before the build even begins. So, what we really want people to understand is you don't want to get too thick in the weeds before you know that you can actually do this.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to this a little bit is it is extremely complicated. So it depends on your zone, what your required lot size is. And it also depends on your zone, how much building you can have on your lot and what your setbacks are. And so the long and the short of it is it is extremely complicated. And every situation will be completely unique, even in the neighborhoods like Sloan's Lake and Chaffee Park that have been blanket rezoned for ADU. Yeah, they allow ADUs, but what you're able to build based on your unique lot will be completely different. So if you already have a giant house on your lot, you might already have too much house on the lot to build an ADU.
Yeah. So so if you're on a zone, a TU at the end, GRO or BMU, you are already zoned ADU. But again, we're finding that a rezone, I mean, they have not denied a rezone in a very long time. So, and obviously, unless there's issues with space, et cetera, but those are already currently zoned for ADUs.
So Lisa, what seems to be the holdup? Is it just, resources at the city that they just don't have enough resources and suddenly more and more people are wanting to do this?
Correct. I mean, you wouldn't believe when we teach our ADU class at the end of the ADU, we do like a survey of, why did you attend, et cetera. And I would say close to half of the real estate agents who are attending our class, maybe a fourth, clients that are currently looking for a property that has an ADU on it or that they can build an ADU on it. So it is hugely popular. The city's backed up for licenses for short-term rental. I mean, they're just backed up, and I don't think the pandemic helped at all.
Sabrina brought up a point that the ADU could actually be part of your existing house. So if somebody has a basement, they could conceivably convert that to their ADU, correct? And wouldn't that be much faster and cheaper and easier? And then what are the parameters for doing that? Does it need to be a certain size? Are you allowed to have a full kitchen down there? I don't know if you know any of that information.
I can speak to that a little bit. So it is, once again, it's similar to the ADU issue where it is, zone by zone, lot by lot. We don't typically see a neighborhood that's blanket rezoned. The issue I think that many homeowners run into is getting the second kitchen down in that basement unit. Is a lot of times the city is hesitant to allow that, and getting that second kitchen, you oftentimes have to sort of, tell them that if you're not zoned for, a secondary unit or something like that, essentially you have to prove to the city or sign an affidavit saying that the second kitchen is for your own use, for personal or religious reasons or whatever it could be. So the second kitchen is definitely the challenge with the mother-in-law units. I would definitely say, because you already have an existing structure, converting a basement to another unit is, of course, less expensive than building a whole new house. But it can be very challenging depending on what your zoning is and what the city is wanting to allow. Traditionally, the city has not been very friendly for whatever reason to letting people add these basement units, but they are friendly to the accessory, the carriage houses and things like that. So we will see if this evolves as time goes on, and I'm guessing it probably will.
So Sabrina, like in terms of if you want to convert your basement but not do the full kitchen, because I think the issue is the gas is like a gas stove. Like, so if you just did like a mini fridge and a sink and a microwave, would that be easier to do something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're allowed to do that. I know that when we redid our basement, and one of the big things the inspector was looking for was to make sure we didn't actually have a cooktop or an oven down there, but we have a fridge, we have a sink, and we have a microwave down in our basement. And that's no issue at all. That's more like a wet bar type situation that you're looking at. So that would be a good way to go. Of course, if you're looking to Airbnb that, a lot of people don't cook in their Airbnb at all. We definitely have worked with units that don't have full kitchens, and people, tend to stay and they stay occupied. They rent out for just slightly less, but they do stay very well occupied because a lot of people are coming to town to really enjoy all of the great food that we have and go out and things like that. And even if you do have a kitchen, our kitchen in our carriage house, we rent it out short term. It rarely gets used.
Less cleaning, right, Sabrina?
That's right. It stays clean. I don't know. I don't do the cleaning, so I don't have to worry about that.
You guys have any other questions for us?
And any questions on short-term rental or Airbnb?
If, okay, so like Sabrina has an AD or a carriage house
Mhm.
and a basement, and then the main, right, or the upstairs.
Correct.
In that case, you are only allowed to reside in the upstairs?
So no, so my basement is not its own unit. It's a basement, you know, we're able to close it off and it has its own entrance. So technically we could Airbnb it out if we wanted to do that with our basement. We've done it in the past, but what the rules and regulations are in Denver is that you can only have one part of your property short-term rented at a time. So only one short-term rental contract at a time. So if I were to put both of my carriage house and my basement on Airbnb as separate listings, what I would need to do is if my carriage house was rented, then I'd need to block off my basement and vice versa. They both can't be rented at the same time, short-term.
Short-term, but you could long-term the carriage house, short-term the basement, and live in the main house.
Sure, yes, if that's what I wanted to do, I could do that. Any other questions?
I have a I have a what's called a single family home on Colfax, on East Colfax, but just short of where the East Colfax, before they started calling it East Colfax, you know, east. So just west of that, on north side of the street. And I've been short-term, so it's my daughter lives there and she has permission. She's the tenant. She's been there since 2018. And we crossed our T's and dotted our I's and did everything perfect for a short-term rental for her. So she's rented the first floor out. So long story short, zoning came last week, or well, they said they failed her before they came out because she didn't call them back, and she's been trying to reach them since July. Anyway, I don't know what's going on in zone. I don't know what is going on, but they said, which we don't believe, so we have a meeting with excise tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they're doing. What are they doing? That excise sends information over to
Yeah.
zone.
So
And
this is,
yeah.
go ahead. Did you have more to add to that?
Well, I was just gonna say, so she failed us before she came back out. Then she came out and said it was because we had a door from her floor, her upstairs, to the main floor, and there's a kitchen in both. But the kitchen, we got the loan and everything, knowing that the kitchens were there for 28 years. So we didn't put it in.
Yeah. So unfortunately, that doesn't,
Right.
This happens all the time. And what the city of Denver has started doing is upon renewal of short-term rental licenses, they're reviewing listings. And there's 3 things to be concerned about when they're reviewing listings. First of all, you have your zoning code. And then you have your building codes, and then you have whether or not everything was permitted when it was done. And so what City of Denver is doing, and it's happened to a couple of the clients that I work with as well, is even if a carriage house or a basement unit has been there for 100 years, they're looking at, number one, what's the zoning code on the property? Is it zoned for 2 units? If it's not, they want to make sure it's not 2 units. So it sounds like that's what's happened to you a little bit, is if they're discussing a door between the units, you're probably zoned like an SU something. So you're not
an MU. MS, Main Street.
Okay.
It's commercial. It's Main Street commercial.
So I would think that you might want to reach out to ADU for you. You might be pretty easy to get yourself up to speed on everything that you need to get up to speed on with regards to the basement unit. So
It's the main floor. It's actually the main floor.
okay, the main floor, whatever. I'm talking about the whole house, and I think that's what they have the issue with, is that there's a door splitting up the whole house. I believe, but I believe you can probably get a zoning variance if that's what you need. But they're looking also to see the building permits, which is why they were looking, to see if you had that door in there. That second kitchen, whoever put that in there 50 years ago or 40 years ago or whatever, the lender, it does not pull permits to make sure that whatever's in that home is permitted.
Right.
So it's probably likely that whoever built that second kitchen didn't pull the appropriate permit.
I would guess that's true.
Yeah. And so if it makes you feel any better, I have a client who has a very similar situation to yours. City has been very nice to her, and all they've asked is that she just get a permit for that kitchen.
So
And-
how do you do that without pulling out your whole kitchen?
Well, she doesn't have to, well, we don't know yet whether or not she's going to have to revise her kitchen or not, but you can get a permit for it after the fact. I know that because she's actually working with ADU for You. They're helping her with the process of getting the permit for that second kitchen. Now, she's pretty early on in the process. It takes forever. This has been going on for months for her now, but finally they're coming and they're doing like measurements of everything. And she had to provide architectural plans. And so it's costing her, a couple of grand right now. And we don't know how much more it will cost if she has to redo part of the kitchen.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's not, I was told that if you just took out the stove and put it in a bedroom and put something else there and had to come back out again.
That I don't know. I mean, I know I know that it doesn't count as a kitchen if you don't have a cooktop and an oven. So if you wanted to just remove that and fill it in, throw that cooktop in the garage for the inspection, certainly that would be something that you could consider doing. And that's, just based upon your own risk tolerance. The city at renewal will look at your listing pictures. So if you've got the stove in the listing pictures, they're going to probably ask for another inspection.
Yeah, I was just confused because the stove in the listing pictures is the main kitchen. That's the main floor, the main kitchen.
Yeah.
And it was just the one upstairs that they were questioning, not in the AD.
And I'm guessing what's happened is, they've seen that the upstairs is rented out a high percentage of the time, and they're wondering how this person who's the primary resident is living there. And of course, if you're really living there,
You have a kitchen.
you probably have a
Yeah,
kitchen.
she does. She does.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that might,
well, thank you.
I can't answer all of the questions, but I think they do look at to some extent, they must be looking at the entire house for you.
Does everybody on renewal get inspected?
No, not everybody. I mean, I can tell you that my carriage house, we were very lucky in that ours was completely permitted. The person who had the house before us had gone through like a whole rigmarole with the city. So when I go to renew my license, every single year I've been approved within a day without any questions asked.
Yeah, this is our first, we've done it 4 years and this was the first time.
Yeah, and even this year, now that they're doing inspections, we were not, I wondered if we would get an inspection, but we did not.
All right, thank you.
So Sabrina, can you talk about that a little bit? Is the short-term rental process, is that changed at all? Like you said, they're now doing inspections yearly?
Yes. Yeah, so excuse me. The short-term rental process is ever changing with the city of Denver. And they continue to, update it and improve it and change how they're doing things. And of course it ebbs and flows with, how understaffed they are or how much staff they have. Right now, the city is a little bit understaffed. in the short-term rental department. They are working with zoning, which is a brand new thing. They update the application process rather frequently. And the city does a lot of this, sort of unofficially. They don't put it on the books. They don't put it in writing. They just change their behavior, which I believe they have the autonomy to do. And so, yes, it changes all the time. But we actually have a short-term rental advisory committee meeting tonight, and anybody can sit in on those calls. They're just Zoom calls right now. They used to be in person. You used to be able to go in person, and you can provide public comments in those meetings as well.
And then Sabrina, you don't see, it sounds like, along with long-term rentals and short-term rentals, there's a little more rules and regulations. You don't see the city going, we don't want this at all. Like, we don't want, short-term rentals. You don't see that happening at all.
No, I think the city's come to a nice agreement and compromise with the primary residence requirement here in Denver for short-term rentals. They seem pretty, they don't seem to be pushing back on that at all. But they are very focused on making sure that properties are in fact primary residences, and they have new compliance software. They've had compliance software for quite some time, but now they have a new company doing the compliance. And this new compliance software is really heavily focused on that primary residence. And I can tell you that, just knowing what I know about Airbnb and Vrbo and how open their platforms are to APIs and things like that the city can probably see every little thing that's happening with your listing, right down probably even to the name of your guest that's staying there. I mean, I know that the software that we use on the back end to help manage some of our properties, the software can see anything. So I'm sure the compliance software can also see everything. So it is difficult to fly under the radar with regards to the rules and regulations. And it is a bit of a challenge because, like Coop was saying, it kind of gets updated all the time, and the way they do things updates. And so then all of a sudden you thought you were golden and you start getting questioned about something.
And Nina, also, I don't know if you guys have heard this, and Sabrina and I are not sure how they are going to actually pull this off, but by 2023, they're saying that, that, Nina, the long-term landlords are going to need a license that will also include an inspection. And again, staffing wise, we're not sure how they're going to do that, but that is that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, our last meeting, we touched onto that, and I did attend part of a meeting. And so, yeah, I think the city's biting off more than they can chew.
They might be.
Yeah, but I am going to kind of pivot and talk. Lisa, can you talk about costs? Like, if somebody wants to convert a basement, what are the cost kind of approximate to start the process for building? If they want to do something in the backyard, I know it depends on size. Like, you are building one quite big, so
yes, that's an excellent question. So we used to talk about it as square footage, a price per square footage, and we don't like to do that anymore because, like Sabrina and I have both stated today, that there's a ton of complexities here. I think the biggest misconception is that you can just pop your garage and that would be super easy. And California has kind of messed us up on that because it is super easy in California to do that, but it is not in Denver. There's a lot of stuff involved with the actual structure of the garage. So that is not as easy as one would think it would be. So I'm going to give you some examples of the projects we're doing right now. So right now, one project is a 3-car garage, 600 to 700 square feet. They're building above it. It's going to cost between $315 and $350. The least expensive way to go is a ranch, just one level. So right now we're working on a 576 square foot ranch detached. That's going to go around $250. We have a standalone 2-story that we're working on right now. 350 to 375. We have a 15, 12 square foot box we're working on. We're going 24 feet up. And that is going to be about 380. So it's so like, you would think when you're going through the numbers that one would be way less than another, and it doesn't always end up that way. So again, I think you need to be, you really need to dig deep. I would get with a company. It's $20,000 upfront before you start anything else. And that's just going through, you know, all the stuff that we've already gone through to get prepared. So it's just way more complicated, again, like we've said, than people think. And I've been absolutely shocked going through the process, everything that's involved in it. And I think people also think it's going to be expensive than it actually is going to be in the end, because of all the things you need to do.
So is it less expensive than to maybe attach your garage to your house and then add on to the top of it like an extension of your house, so that it's not really called an ADU?
Well, it depends on the garage. Like I said, it depends on the structure of the garage and what is needed to support the ADU. So what we spend a lot of time with ADU for you doing is, well, for one, like Coop, if you want to come to us to let us take a look at what you're dealing with right now, but a lot of times what we spend doing is redoing things that were not done appropriately to begin with. Not always the problem of, like, it wasn't your fault. It was done before all these rules and regulations came into play. So, you know, I always say, just do it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to redo it at some point.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I didn't, maybe I didn't make very clear in the beginning is an accessory dwelling unit would be its own, you know, it would be its own living space, its own apartment. So even if it's attached to the house, it's still an accessory dwelling unit if it's like meant to be function as another residence. But if you wanted to do an extension on the home, then that's a different story. But I think you still end up going through a lot of the same, especially if you're building on top of a garage that was built with a garage foundation and a garage footer. What ADU for you is finding is that anytime you're trying to build on top of a garage in Colorado, you're almost always just knocking down that garage and rebuilding the whole darn thing, because the garages aren't meant to support a living space above that. And they don't have the foundations required for a living space.
And what about neighbor? I've heard that the most important comment from neighbors, such as in Park Hill, let's say, they worry about parking for all, like, the millions of people that it's going to create and bring into your neighborhood.
There are rules around that in a lot of cities and counties too for short-term rental, that you have to have designated parking for it. So yes, that's definitely an issue. Parking. What another issue, Sabrina, is trash, noise. Denver is very compliant. They actually use us as an example to other cities and states for what we're doing, because we're doing a really good job. And part of it has to do with the fact that we have an entire committee, the STRAC committee, who is focused on just that. And there are not a lot of committees like this or in Denver for other things. So we might be working our way out of a job, right, Sabrina?
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think that's the hope, is eventually it's just like
that
a
is
normal thing.
That's the hope. Yep.
Do you know, Lisa, if there's a parking requirement with ADUs here in Denver? I don't think there is.
No.
I bet that will come down the line.
That will probably come down the line. We are toying with the idea of an attached garage to the ADU, or using the current half of the current garage. We have a 2-car garage right now, so that we could use the entire 1,000 square foot for living space instead of the 200 square feet that would be required for parking inside a garage. So yeah, there's so many options that you can do it. You can just do a pad, talking about just doing a parking pad and maybe covering it. Because someday probably we're all going to be using electric cars, and we'll probably all be down to just one car per family, the way things are going. So there's so many options, but so far there has not been requirements in regards to parking. We also have a huge lot, driveway, and we're on the corner, so there shouldn't be any issue with that.
So Lisa, quick question. I've heard of people looking at, like, people like to stay in short-term rentals that are something unusual, like converting like an Airstream and putting that in your backyard. How legal is that to do? Is that something that you can do in Denver or no?
Yeah, you can put a Sabrina, what didn't you?
No, you can't. Technically, you can't get a license for that.
Didn't you have a neighbor that had a?
That was done in Aurora.
In Aurora.
And that was early on, so I don't know if that's changed. There have been a lot of people who do things like that, where they put a trailer, an Airstream, or even we've seen people rent out tents in their backyard on Airbnb. But technically the rule is you can only get a license on an actual property. So you probably will get questioned about that Airstream at some point in time. You might get the initial license. They have no idea what your plans are when you get that initial license, but once you go to renew, they'll probably question you.
ADU for you though is doing a bunch of themed ADUs that are for short-term rentals, to attract short-term rentals. I think they're working on one that's like a Disney theme. And so, yeah, there are a lot of cool things that people are doing. We are not going to do a Disney theme in our ADU.
All right, I think we are at the time of our session. Does anyone have any last minute questions for Lisa or Sabrina? Well, thank you for being on our call and sharing your information. I was hoping building an ADU would be a little bit easier, but it sounds like there's some complexity. But, if you look at the value of real estate in Denver, like long-term, I think this is really a great investment. And like you said, Lisa, it's a way you've now changed phases in your life. And it's a way to let you keep your house, but then also generate income from it. And long-term, it definitely will pay off. So I think it's just painful right now. And hopefully you're the cutting edge. And once it gets through you, like everything will be fast.
Yeah, it has not been painful at all, because I used a really good company. And I think really that is the key. I think people who are trying to do it on their own and piece together all these moving parts I don't know how that would be really stressful.
Yeah, so thank you. And then again, if you want to send your contact info, that would be really great. So, and you can send it to our Facebook page, and then I can give you a list of everybody who's been on the call. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thanks, Nina. Nice to see you.
All right.
Awesome.
Until next month. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.